Welcome to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where truth isn't filtered, sovereignty is sacred, and the rebellion is a return to self. This isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering. And we're here to break the trance of comfortability, claim our gifts, and rise as the embodied rebels we were born to be. Here we journey with the wild hearts, the way showers, and the visionaries who chose their truth over comfort, and their mission over fear, and their soul over the system. This is where the coded ones come to speak, the ones who didn't fit in because they were never meant to, and the ones who turned their pain into their power and their story into their medicine. So drop in, take a breath, and let's remember who we are, one sacred rebellion at a time. Welcome back to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where sovereignty leads, systems are questioned, and the cosmic truth always finds its way home. Health isn't just the absence of illness, it is your birthright. It is your natural state. It is the divine gift your body has been whispering to you all along. Today on the Sacred Rebellion podcast, we're honored to welcome Tawni Sands, the visionary founder of Holistic Sands. With her deep-rooted work in spiritual psychology, subconscious healing, and Kalos, Tawni is not just transforming individual lives, she is leading a movement to reclaim true wellness, sovereignty, and a personal freedom. If you've ever felt stuck in your healing journey, overwhelmed by symptoms, or like the answers are always outside of you, this conversation will change the way you see yourself forever. This episode is a bold reclamation of your birthright to thrive. So take a deep breath, tune in, and let's step into the holistic truth together. Welcome to the show, Tawni.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm grateful to be here.
What inspired the creation of Holistic Sands, and was there a defining moment that shifted your view of health and wellness?
Yes. So what inspired Holistic Sands was really my own personal journey in seeking wellness, feeling really good in my body, something that I had been seeking out really since I was about 17, and some certain health challenges were coming forward. But what I realized through the process was that those challenges were truly gifts in the unraveling and what I was learning and what I was here to learn. I think there's something that's so beautiful about what the body communicates to us, whether it's the physical body or the emotional body, that is literally the keys to things that we've been looking for when we can hear what their messages are, rather than kind of pushing them down or suppressing them, trying to quiet them, or, I think that's why we have prescription drugs that have the whole list of side effects, right? Because we try to put a cap on a energetic that's communicating to us, and then it wants to express itself. So it's going to come out and express itself in other ways. So yes, I was very inspired to start this from the sense of I just hadn't been seeing anyone else really talking about it or living it. And the few people that I did, I was learning from. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that a lot of people, when they start a health journey, a lot of us think like, what does healthiness look like, right? I'm sure you're the same boat, but like the food pyramid, right, was something that we all learned that was like, the top is like where you shouldn't have as much and the bottom is bigger, right? And so, it's very fascinating. It's completely outdated, obviously, because it's like one is not the same. And now we realize that not even all fruits and vegetables are all created equally, right? Sometimes people can handle watermelon or pineapple or things like that. And sometimes some people cannot. There's different food allergies and things like that come into play. And I think that each person is so individual in their health journey. What's your comments on that?
Absolutely. 1,000%. We all have fingerprints, right? And every single person's fingerprint is different than another's, even twins. And so exactly what you're saying is like our energetic imprint is so unique and specific to us. To know, right? It's like to know thyself is what we're a big part of, like what we're called to understand, to be here in a healthy, thriving space. And not to compare ourselves, or not to, there's no one size fits all when it comes to the things that your body wants to be eating. And that's really like when we're talking about physical line, right? There's like the physical world reality of health and well-being, but also, we have our soul, our soul is here to learn certain lessons. And oftentimes that physical world reality, that physical line, in spiritual psychology, we call it the goal line of life, right? So our goal, we set goals in the physical world to go for and to achieve. And we can have those physical goals with our, with our body, our physical body, but also kind of like what can assist us in moving on one level or another depends on our soul line as well, which is the learning line and what we need to learn to actually be in that embodiment of what that goal is.
Yeah, and each of us have that unique. I always tell people your soul has a unique blueprint, right? And just like your fingerprints, your soul has that uniqueness as well, right? That you all have we all have our unique medicine, we all have our uniqueness. And that's why, like, I always tell my clients, like, you can't copy and paste someone else's, like, even like their business model, because they're not going to be what's going to work for someone else. That's their business model, which is not going to work. And so, even in your aspect, like, that is even on a physical level and also at a soul level, that is going to be unique.
Yeah. And often what I've seen over time, what I've experienced with myself, right, is like this seeking of fulfillment. And a lot of times people think that fulfillment is going to exist on the goal line of like, when I achieve this, then I'm gonna be fulfilled and I'll be I feel like satisfaction can kind of mix in with that as well. But the truth is, like, fulfillment isn't even found on the goal line. It is like merely an expression of the soul. And I think there's just such a beauty in the truth of seeing more of the whole of the human in our approach to wellness rather than it just being the physical line of reality. I think we could be seeking and seeking right on that level of
Mhm.
that physical world and not find it. I mean, we know like millionaires that talk about, money isn't everything. And um I think it's just that calling back to that merging of spiritual awareness here in the now and living what we're being called to. And
Right.
again, going back to each one of us is so unique and so different. And I think those that like truly are able to hear those messages are just, they're so blessed.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. You talk about health being a birthright and a divine gift. Can you share what that means to you on a personal level?
Yeah. So on a personal level, it means that all of the answers that I'm seeking are available to me. And understanding that all of the energy that's ever existed is all here in the now, right? And that we're able to access it. We're able to tap into it. One of my favorite quotes is by Rumi, and he says, "Your task is not to look for love," right? Because that is our inherent nature. It's like the highest level. All major religions agree that God is love, right? God is loving. And so if our task is not to look for love, it's to merely seek and find all the barriers you've built against it. And um to me, that's what this journey like home is about. Truly. It's about letting go of the misperceptions around who we think we are and the things that we hold against ourselves that keep us small, that keep us bogged down, that keep us from really just living in our truth. Um, Keep us judging ourselves and the world around us. And there's a real beauty in that being called back to it, allowing self-forgiveness and compassion to flood in because everybody here is also trying to see and figure that out as well.
Yeah, I think most of us have all the same common goals, right? It just maybe looks a little different on being able to get to that common goal. I think most of us are seeking love and happiness and safety. And most of us can say that that looks differently. Maybe that's in a relationship, maybe that's traveling the world, maybe that's having kids in a family or whatever that is, but every single person has typically the same common goal when it comes to how do they want their life to be in a healthy manner, right? I mean, obviously you have people who deal with mental illness and have depression or anxiety or anything like that, but typically most people's common goal is, and I'm sure you're in the same boat when people come to me, they're like, "I just wanna be happy. I just wanna be happy."
Yeah. Paramahansa says that everyone actually on their like deepest subconscious level is seeking bliss. is just seeking that state of bliss
Mhm.
in whatever it is that they're doing. And by grasping onto certain things or attaching that to certain things of like, well, maybe this is how I'm going to get it, or this is, and again, it's like, it's such a physical world reality. What I love doing in sessions is really bringing people's awareness to that soul line of what is your soul's lesson here, and what are you holding, right? What are you holding that's preventing you from experiencing that? Because you actually can experience that in this moment.
I always tell people happiness is a choice and your choices have consequences, whether that's positive or good or negative, right? And so consequences don't necessarily always mean a negative aspect. It also means positive, but it's a choice, right? It's like a choice where with an action, then like science, like Newton's laws, with an action, there's always a reaction, right? And whether that's positive or negative, it's going to be some type of a reaction. I really am a firm believer that happiness really is a conscious choice of how you perceive the world and how you're going to take action to be able to have that. So it's perception and action. And that's personally how I live my life. Being able to see something, and if it's a negative aspect, then I'm like, okay, what is it making me believe that? And so for listeners who are new to spiritual psychology, how do you describe that in simple terms? How does that exist in people's daily life?
Yeah. So I would also say that when it comes to recognizing those certain things, right, is to not judge them as good or bad, right or wrong, negative or positive, because there are feelings that we enjoy feeling, and there are feelings that are extremely uncomfortable. The more comfortable you can get in the uncomfortable, to hear the truth, right? Without judgment. There's something, it's like the judgment in and of itself of the, oh, that's bad. It's almost like it allows energy, right, to come in to get a little more sticky, and it can take longer with those things. I would say too, like beyond this thinking of duality, right, is what we call unconditional love of, okay, what is this message? Seeing that like the ego, right? Our mind is it's a beautiful servant and a terrible master. So
Mhm.
when we let our mind kind of take over in telling us like what to think and where to go, and it can just make things a lot more complicated than they need to be, right? Not to say that life isn't complex, it doesn't have its complexities, right? Like puzzles, but you can still figure the puzzle out. But the more you bring in your judgments of those things, come the emotions. And that like brings in the frustration and can just create chaos, right? And this like perpetuation of chaos, and then beliefs of like, I'm never going to figure this out. Or if we can just focus on like one piece at a time, right? To just one step at a time. I think we're all called forward into things that are necessary, right? Because change is always happening, but on even just a subtle level, whether it's, our skin cells are changing every day and shedding, and leaves are changing around us. It's such a slow process, and it's so beautiful. But if we could relax into that space of the present moment, we would realize like how much time we have.
Well, and I think that people forget that each day is a gift, right? So, like, you waking up every single morning is a gift, and you get to experience life, and you can either take that gift and live it to its fullest and enjoy the day. I mean, I get like sometimes we have to be human and we have to like do human things, right? I call it my 3D reality, right? It's like, oh, I had to pay bills today. It's totally 3D, right? Like, and things like that. And you can take that 3D experience and you can amplify it like, oh my gosh, thank you, light gods, for keeping my power on today, right? Like, thank you for doing that. Like, and you can really amplify any energy. And that's what's so fun is like the psychological way that you perceive life can be so simple, but also you can amplify that with frequency and the ability to shift the mindset to be able to amplify what you're experiencing. So like when you do pay your light bill or your water bill, I saw a really funny joke the other day, and it's like, don't open your water bill and your power bill at the same time because you'll electrocute yourself. And I like died laughing. I thought it was like so corny but so funny at the same time. Like combine the two energies together. And I went out to lunch with a friend once, and she was like, we got all done. She actually bought, and I was like, thank you so much. She goes, no, thank you, prosperity spirit, for providing the abundance. And I was like, yeah. That's how you perceive life is like you can either take it and live it to the fullest and really amplify the energies of every life, every day, every minute, every, whatever, and amplify that energy. Or you can be like, God, that dinner was so expensive. There's a shift in perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's a perfect example, right? Of either being completely open with gratitude of like, wow, I just love being here now and experiencing this. And I'm so grateful to be nurturing the bills that are keeping things going and flowing in my life. Yeah, there's such a softening, right? That I feel like is so necessary in a sense of really bringing us into that more of that loving awareness of who we are. And I think Abraham Maslow, right? The hierarchy of needs. At the top, his idea is of self-actualization, which to me is like beyond the duality of thinking, right? It's this place of unconditional loving and literally it's like any challenge in your life, you could just ask, okay, what is this showing me? Right? What is this showing me? And I know for me, like lately, I've gone through like some really challenging relationships in my life. I've gone through a lot of endings and new beginnings. And the thing that I feel like has really kept me in my piece has been asking like, what is this showing me? What is this teaching me? Not to get caught up in the blame of things, in that way. I can also like recognize how certain people are functioning and just make a solid choice from that place, not to necessarily judge them. But I think that's been like the biggest thing that has made a positive impact in my life and continuing to move forward, right? And move into more fulfilling relationships and situations. And I just started working a couple hours a week at a school. It's just really amazing, like how things can unfold and just open, right? Whether it's been something that I picked up early in my life or it's been something generational or, I don't know, like a spirit that just came, came and attached itself at some point in
Yeah.
past lives.
Yeah. It's always when you have those experiences, right? You get thrown in the ringer, and I can relate to that a lot too. And we're talking before this about, the void. The void is it's a very dark feminine aspect, it's the pause before the creation. And, we all experience that, even when we come into this world, it's the darkness, right? We grow in a womb which is dark, and not once to we're like, yeah, I don't really want to be born. Like, no one ever says that. But yet, each time our lives have to like deconstruct, or I call it the tower moment or the death card, right? In tarot, is like everything's ripped down to nothing, right? Something rebirths. And there's so many times in nature that that's so symbolic, right? Like the butterfly, right? She goes into a cocoon and she becomes mush, and she's not ever like, "Ah, you know what? Kind of like into this dark space," or "When am I gonna get my wings? Like, when is this happening?" And it's so symbolic to everybody, like, "I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Like, I'm just not moving." And I'm like, maybe you're just in a pause. And I actually posted this yesterday. It was like, maybe you're just in a pause and your energy is trying to rise, but you're sitting there going like, no, I don't want a Kundalini activation. I want my fucking fairy wings. Like, no, you gotta like sit for a minute and let things brew, right? And it's like when a creation hits, it's like it's gonna be when you have to tear everything down to nothing and you literally have nothing left. The only movement is forward. The only movement is creation. And creation is what creates such a beautiful, more potent medicine within ourselves, because we're able to create from a place of love, a place of not scarcity or rush, but from a place of like surrender and flow and divinity and creation. And creation is not this fluffy, magnetic energy that people talk about. It's a place of deep rooted surrendering to, first of all, I know who the fuck I am. Two, I know I'm powerful. And three, I get to create what I want because I'm a freaking creator and I'm a multidimensional person that can create whatever I want by this simplicity of thought. And I think that kind of goes into like spiritual psychology, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also really ties to our wellness. I mean, I know you've heard me a couple different times when I've been just sharing personal things with you and I'm like, I'm just so ready to be over this. Like I'm so over this,
I'm so ready to stop crowning. I'm ready to be
right?
out, you know?
Right. And every time afterwards I'm like, okay, I just need to sit down and be intentional and write. Writing is a big thing for me of just writing and writing out my intentions, and whether it's just exploring more of like what's inside that hasn't been expressed, is just having that medium to like let the energy move has been really important for me. But back to that, like this idea of creative energy, I mean, we're all creative beings, and oftentimes people with certain health symptoms, I'm just going to say that, have been like disconnected, like they're disconnected or they've shut off some way their creative expression. And so for me, a lot of my approach that has come from spiritual psychology comes from the word education. And the Latin root of the word education is educare, which means to draw out from within. And so there's some principles, and there's like 33 principles and practices in spiritual psychology. One of them is seeing the loving essence in another. And when we focus on that and we know that the person before us has all the inner resources available to them. For me as a practitioner, the truth of it is I'm holding space and I'm asking, I'm going to pull it out. I'm just pulling out what's in there that needs to come out for you to be aware of, that's been inhibiting what your intentions are, right? From actualizing or from being actualized, self-actualized in this present moment. And for me, I've found that with that approach, things can happen really quickly for people when they surrender to genuinely wanting to know the truth and then doing something about it. I've found that those that really don't have success in it make up excuses, and which is okay, but that's also like a function of the ego, right? The ego's job is to keep us safe because it believes everything is right, proper, or justified. And so a lot of times people will justify staying the same even when they're being called out to take accountability for something or take responsibility for something that occurred that sent a ripple out. And they're still in a place of operating, well, this is working for me to a certain degree in whatever capacity that is.
Yep. Yeah, I always ask clients when they tell me blocks that they're experiencing, call they obviously whatever they want to call them. And when we get to the root of the issue, it's like, what is this giving you? Because you're not going to let it go unless you identify, what is this giving you? What is the benefit of you staying in this loop? And there's always a benefit. There's always
Hmm.
a benefit. And you'll be able to go through and say, this is what I'm getting from it. That's not truth. That's actually a lie. And 100% of the time it's a lie, right? Because it's a false belief based on the primal instincts of survival. Because that's what we're programmed. That's our default, is survival. You are literally programmed to survive in the reality that we live in and not thrive. That is the default. It is, think about as like animals, the structure, like they're very like aware, they hear ruffling, they're like, what is that? They're very hyper aware. And so it's because that's survival. That's the primal instincts, right? And so I think a lot of times people forget that that's the default mode. And then we have to go through and reprogram that to essentially turn off that default mode and turn it on to, I call it God codes, right? Where you call it something different, but something that's going to turn you back onto your true divinity self. So that leads me to my next question. Can you explain Kalos and how it integrates into your work? And can you go into detail of like how that would help someone's healing journey to like move out of that primal, default mode?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kalos was co-founded by a doctor, Dr. Valerie, and I had Kalos is a healing practice. It's a healing modality that involves tracing symptoms to their cause. And how this might help somebody is knowing exactly what is contributing to their symptoms. Now, for me, I see really clearly this metaphor of what health is and what symptoms even are. And I like to use this metaphor of the weather, right? So the weather outside, there's many different factors that make up your experience of the weather. So in the same way, there's many different factors that make up your experience of your well-being or your experience of a symptom. So symptoms aren't just going to be a pill that's going to fix the symptom, right? That's what they call treatment, right? And that's what they call there's no it's not about curing anything. This is about true healing. So this is about identifying the different integral parts that have been making up this experience. So with Kalos, there's 10 priorities that we work with. And truly, I've been really sitting with a lot of this because I was recently given this practice of Kalos to do with the material as I see fit, which is a huge honor. There's more than just 10 things that are addressed, but Kalos in and of itself is built on this 10 priority system. So the 10 priorities are structural, exercise and rest, nutritional, cleanse, emotionally inherited traits, the electrical body, your spiritual relationship, actives, and chakras. So based on those 10 things, we ask the body what it wants to address first to enter into a state of healing. And I call this the healing mode. It's the mode in which the body is operating at its innate wisdom, right? To do what it was designed to do, which is to preserve, to heal, to repair. If you get a cut, right, it heals itself. So there are things that can happen that actually block that innate communication from happening. And so in session, the objective is to remove those barriers so that the body can do what it was designed to do, which is to restore itself.
Do you have like a common thread that you're seeing in the collective right now when it comes to what you're experiencing? Do you feel like people are they're dealing with more physical aspects, or are they dealing with more inherited, like genetics? That's a big one is people coming through with different genetic issues that are coming forward. What's your thoughts on that when you use your method?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like one specific thing that is coming forward. And one thing I've noticed is people that have gone to naturopaths before and, they've had their food allergies tested and their intolerances tested, and they're more aligned with eating a certain way. I mean, they'll tend to have more things on the emotional and inherited emotional side of things with maybe like some electrical corrections that are really simple, and they're permanent corrections. Is once your body knows that you've taken care of it, it moves on, like it moves forward. So I would say some people, they'll come to me like once a year for a session just to check in on certain things, or maybe like a couple times a year, but a lot of times they'll have their food allergies and intolerances tested, so that they know what their body wants them to be focused on. So yeah, I guess like the other thing that is kind of common, and this is just a common thing I've noticed, is the pancreas. So one thing I do in a session before we really dive into the priorities is I'll test all of the organs in the body to find out how they're functioning electrically. If they're getting enough energy and they're balanced out, if they're not getting enough, or if they have too much. So we'll find out and identify what your organs are doing. And based on that, it can say a lot about maybe some of the tendencies you have in your life on an emotional level and how you might deal with things. And I feel like those have been pretty spot on. Two of the common ones I see are the pancreas, which is really correlated to worrying. And it's like the mantra of it is I relax and do my best. And the duality of it is if I don't worry, I'll die. So there's kind of this program, right, for worry to keep us alive, right? To keep us safe. And that's a really common one. The other one is the kidneys, which is I love being alive. And I think there's such a beauty in that, like when that comes up for people to really move into that aliveness of what their life is really calling them into.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I can relate to those personally. So
Yeah. The other one is the central spine, which is I'm a success and feeling successful. And so, yeah, that's a fun one too when it comes up because we get to like bring forward all of those things that are just in the way of feeling that way.
what I have experienced with clients is one of the most profound ways to really go through how you feel about money is what is your belief about success? When you see someone that's successful, like what do they look like? How do they talk? What's your belief? Because I think most of the time, a lot of people have this identity of success as more stress. People are wanting from you, taking from you, right? I mean, I've heard it all. So one of them, like, and these are just some of the beliefs I've heard is, if I become successful, then people are going to want something from me. If I become successful, people will have a different opinion of me. If I become successful, the amount of money that I have, I'll just spend more. Or a lot of those stories are really deep rooted in inherited belief systems. Your parents had a belief system with money, and that has been programmed now into you, into your subconscious. And I call it the money meter. So the money meter only goes up as high. Typically, most people make the same amount of money. So, like, whatever your parents made for money is likely the amount that you make, or comparison. I mean, I get like, 1980s is a little different money scenario than like, 2025, but it's typically like the same struggle. So like if your parents struggled with money and they had, they fought over money, or they had belief systems about money, then that's typically how you perceive money as well. And that would go into like your inherited beliefs, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds too like there would be an emotional component to that, which when the emotions come up in a session, and by the way, I use muscle response testing to test either I'm testing the client directly if I'm working with them in person, or I can do distance testing with their consent. When emotions come up, we go back to the age at which they first made a decision. So it's called the age of decision, right? And when we make decisions, they're so powerful in our life. And that's the beauty of free will, is just that power of choice that we have to make. But we can make choices that then carry throughout our entire life. And I think this is why a lot of our collective is drawn to healing their inner child, or healing that childhood, that little boy or that little girl, because we made so many decisions, right? From birth till the age of 5 that really have carried throughout our whole life until we then are able to replace it with the new information that actually aligns more with who we are.
Yeah. I think inner child work is some of the most profound work because you find out why and how you believe something. And like I was sharing earlier, that money thread of like, this is the cap, right? So that's why most time generations stay in the same level of socioeconomical status, is because it's that cap. But once you actually teach your body to get past those belief systems and to make your body feel safe of like, actually successful actually looks like this. This is truth. This is embedded in truth. This is actually truth. Now I'm going to consent to that new belief system. And so it's that ability to like tell that little version of yourself, 13-year-old you, like, and you wanted something for Christmas and your parents didn't have money, teaching your body how to feel safe with that abundance aspect. And so, yeah, your nervous system plays a massive role in your safety.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of life experience, right, is channeled through our perception, which is completely run by the belief systems. Exactly what you're saying. I mean, that's the biggest thing with, I think, any healing, like true healing work, is pulling out those beliefs really at the time, right? They're beliefs that no longer serve us, because maybe they served in they served right when we took them on, but they're outdated, and replacing them with the higher truth is, I think, like what this generation is being called to do. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Can you share a transformational story where addressing subconscious patterns completely shifted someone's health or their life?
So one client um I've worked with more recently, um, she was in the Navy and contracted. And as I started working with her, things really just started unraveling really quickly for her. Whereas she started developing like closer relationships with her family, who she had felt like, you know, estranged from. Um, her her physical wellness was improving, and just this immense amount of joy was flooding into her life to the extent where she'd been wanting to start this business, and so she ended up starting to dive into that. And within about 11 months, I would say, of having sessions throughout that time, she was like a completely different person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean a different person, but just more herself and more in this space of love and enjoying what was going on in her life. She had moved. She had just been open to exploring the things that like she'd always wanted to, but just wasn't taking action on them. Yeah, about 11 months, like her life was completely different from the first time she walked into my office.
Wow. What a beautiful story. And also, what an incredible experience do you get to witness people transform their lives by the symbol of choice and dedication to themselves. Your mission includes impacting the next 100 generation. How does your day-to-day work contribute to that long-term legacy?
It's just one day at a time, one day at a time, one person at a time. Truly, I perceive myself as a participant in that already happening. Really, I'm in the space of like enjoying the ride, enjoying the flow, and um, just loving that where we are, like where we are. I think about like where we were 15 years ago. Pre COVID, um, it was really difficult to talk to people about meditation,
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh yeah, people are just really aware of more of what we are and what's possible. It's like it truly is like one of the most exciting times to be alive. And one thing I want to encourage listeners to is to like not get caught up in the doomsday narratives, because there is always going to be something that you can latch onto that's going to upset your. So the heart of spiritual psychology addresses this idea that we have unresolved, like what we consider an unresolved issue is when we make the statement, I am upset because, and there's something that's loaded behind there.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can release ourselves, right, from those upsets and really truly own, right, what that is inside, because that thing inside that's upsetting is what's calling you, right? And I think it's just so incredible to talk about this concept of world peace, right? Because how it's like, how do we even accomplish peace, right, ourselves is actually going to set the ripple across the world. So if we can own our own upsets and heal that and be at peace with that. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying that everything's just okay, right, that we have to tolerate certain things, because that's not the truth of it. The truth is, like, you can be at peace and make your decisions. You can be at peace and set boundaries. And when you're expressing that truth, that's exactly what those others need to hear. So, yeah, I wanted to encourage people not to give into those narratives, to be aware of
Yeah.
what you're buying into, right? Because it's almost like this spell that's like across the planet of foretelling the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is we create it, and we're here to create it.
Yep.
We're here to co-create it.
It's like if people send out, like, because AI is really big right now, right? So, like, if enough people send out something that's a false narrative, you're actually going to create that narrative because you're co creating that and actually believing that this is real. And so, like, I just saw a bunch of videos of like Yellowstone, and I don't live that far from Yellowstone, and how like animals are leaving, and like the Yellowstone thing's going to blow up. And I'm like, you guys, this is not real. This is not, animals are not leaving by the masses. Animals are not going anywhere. Like, it's AI generated. And watch the videos, like pay attention to some of the details of those videos. It's like some of it's like snow, like it's freaking August here. Like, we don't, I mean, you'll see patches of snow, but you're not going to have like a full blown ass blizzard in Yellowstone. Like, I'm sorry, like, sorry to like, hurt your feelings, but like that, it's, you have to start paying attention to detail and starting to use your discernment of whether or not something's real or fake. And I think that that's going to amplify a little bit through the collective, is that, and I think spiritual people are probably one of the easiest, I think personally, to like, if anything is a conspiracy theory, like people are going to jump on that bandwagon. And I've even seen like some pretty high end healers, that have jumped on that bandwagon of like, oh yeah, I see an eruption and, animals know what's going on. It's like, you just made yourself look like you're not a real channeler because there's nothing going on. Like, that's not, but if you co-create something, you're going to create that in the reality. And I don't want that thing to blow up. Like, that'd be bad news for me. So it's like co-creating something that's like, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to create, the shadow government or whatever. They're going to create a negative. They know how creation works. So they're going to create negative agendas. They're going to create negative stories to have people like you and I jump on a bandwagon of spiritual deception and create something because they know we're really powerful creators. And so not to like jump into something that's like, this could be a whole podcast within itself, but
Seriously.
in a nutshell, like what I'm hearing from you is like, be very conscious of what you're co-creating with.
Yeah, and have fun. Be in the loving, be in the joy of it. I appreciate what you just shared because I personally have gone through almost like this grieving process of realizing the level of deception that certain people have been okay with, and they don't want to take accountability for it. And it's run so deep. It ran deep inside of me where I really needed to take a step back from what I was doing and just take this time to myself to address that inner upset that's been going on, because the truth of it is we live in a whole spectrum of light and dark. And for me, I see the dark as a lot of the unknown, right? The unexplored, the places we haven't brought light to. And I think it's coming out in people in our reality too, because they haven't explored those aspects of themselves. And so, not to say that accepting these things is easy, right? It's definitely not an easy feat, so to say, right? It's like not for the faint of heart, but to be intentional of like, I'm going to resolve this inside of me, because carrying anger, and it's like Buddha says, like carrying anger is a poison to ourselves. It's like, doing it for ourselves, we're able to do it for others and the planet. I think that's just been like the thing I come back to every time when something comes up for me that just feels, life crushing or altering in some way. It's because it actually is altering the parts of me that have wanted to stay in the dark.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I can accept the deception, I can accept that there are people that want to be destructive. How is that going to change how I walk? How I walk, how I live my life. And yeah, I think there's like this grinding. They call it the never-ending spiral, right? Where we spiral up, and we see things from a higher perspective again, and another. Yeah, I'm grateful for people like you that are embracing this journey with me. Yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can people connect with you, your community, or experience your work if they're ready to go deeper?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Tawni Sands. or on my website at www.holisticsands.com. And I have a 12-week program that's called Return to Thrive, which I highly recommend if what we shared today resonates for you and really what you're being called back to yourself in new, higher ways. Definitely. Um, and I have some new things coming out that I won't talk about, but you can subscribe to my emailing list to be one of the first people to hear about it.
Well, thank you again for joining us inside the Sacred Rebellion podcast, where truth is sovereign, healing is holy, and your voice matters. If something stirred in your soul today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, speak it, and let it ripple. Hit that subscribe button and stay close. The revolution isn't coming. It's already moving inside you. Until next time, stay grounded in your truth and rise in your divine remembrance. Have a beautiful day.